So let me ask you, Carolina's 13 now. They got Georgia Tech. We talked off air about Georgia Tech's struggles. That should be a win. NC State's going to be a different game just because those games are always nasty Friday after Thanksgiving. I mean, it's pretty clear Carolina has to beat Clemson to even continue this conversation. But if they did, Bud, is there any shot? And you've done this for a long time. I personally think there's no shot. I don't see it. But is there a shot and a scenario that Carolina can get to that fourth seed and get to that college football playoff? What do they have to do in these next 3 games aside from win them to get there?
Yeah, I think you need to probably smoke Georgia Tech, right? Can't have a game where they're like, hey, guys, even Georgia Tech scored on these dudes, right? And I think that would help in the committee's mind to continue to advance the narrative that defense is improving, which I think it actually is somewhat, to be honest. Even with losing those defensive linemen, which concerned me the last couple of weeks, and they seem to have not. I mean, you say not missed a beat, implying that they're good, but like they're not. To my eyes, they're not regressing necessarily after losing those guys up front. I think you clearly need to beat NC State, which do we know if MJ Morris is going to play for NC State? I don't know if he's playing this weekend. They're 4-point underdogs at Louisville, and that's with a banged up Malik Cunningham. So maybe you want to read into that as you will. I think their center might be dinged too. The depth chart they put out was a little sketch there in Raleigh for my liking. I looked at it, I was like, okay, so everybody's 100% healthy NC State. Got it. All right, and then you need to beat Clemson for sure. I mean, just if you pull that off, then you need to start comparing some resumes. Clearly, like undefeated TCU is in over them, no doubt. I think Tennessee is probably in over Carolina if they have one loss, right? So that's going to be tough. You need Georgia, I think, to just dispatch of LSU. So Georgia gets in. So those are probably 2 SEC teams in. I think you need Ohio State to smack Michigan. Because if Michigan takes that big-time loss, the rest of their schedule might look a little bit more like sketchy. Like if Ohio State can go and win by 3 touchdowns over Michigan, maybe or 24 or something like that, well, then that's a loss that might be disqualifying for Michigan because you can look at the rest of the schedule. You can look at the Michigan schedule and say, hey, they shouldn't have canceled that non-conference game and bought out of it against UCLA like they did. And they did. I mean, that was a choice. And now their non-conference schedule looks really poor. So maybe if Michigan gets smacked by Ohio State, or if Illinois springs the upset this weekend, beats Michigan, and Michigan were to also lose in Columbus, that 2 losses clearly they're not going to go over a 1-loss ACC champion there. TCU, that's a tough one. Like a 1-loss TCU that's a champ might go over Carolina. It might not. It just kind of depends, I think, on how they look and why they lost, right? And in the Pac-12, I think it's as simple as just get yourself a 2-loss Pac-12 champion, which is entirely possible. So all those things sound easy, but like if you had to put a parlay together of all these things that occurring, the odds they're probably less than 1%.
Yeah, the way I kind of look at it, Bud, is all right. So the likely Georgia. I mean, I think we can say they're going to be the prohibitive favorite to win the SEC championship game over LSU. Whoever wins the Big Ten. If TCU wins out, clearly they're going to be in. And I think you can make a case if USC wins out. They've got a little bit better metrics than Carolina. Very similar to Carolina. Offense is a little bit better in the defense. While not a lot better, it is better. So I think you can make a legitimate case for those 4 teams if they win their conference championships. My issue, and going back to talking about the arbitrary nature of the committee, is when you look at their criteria, what's number 1 on that list? Championships won. So Tennessee's not even going to play for the SEC championship, and yet I think we all can agree that Tennessee's probably got to step on teams like North Carolina and maybe even a team like USC who potentially could win, and I'll throw Clemson there, of course, who potentially could win a Power 5 championship, but not be able to leapfrog Tennessee, who did not even get to play in their championship game. When that is like the number 1 factor that the committee lays out. I mean, it's on their website. I don't quite get that. I'll have an issue with that if that occurs. I know we've seen it happen before, and it'll happen again. But if you're going to lay out guidelines, stick to them. That's the frustrating part for me.
Do we have the